Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mrs. B.S. Moleli, English First Additional Language Lecturer at Orbit TVET College, Rustenburg campus. For more information, I may be contacted on 079 799 3794 or the college WhatsApp number 082 063 3835. Today we are going to learn communication. I'm going to pause for 2 minutes so that I give you an opportunity to define the term communication in your own understanding. Let's resume in 2 minutes time. Welcome back. How I wish you people were here so that we can interact and discuss the definition of communication together. And I know for sure that you people are so smart and intelligent. I can't wait to meet with you and hear from individuals how they define the term communication. Nonetheless, I have prepared a definition for you, and I'm saying communication is a two-way process where information, which is message, is sent from one person who is the sender through a channel, which is the medium, the manner in which the message is conveyed, to another person who is the receiver, who reacts by giving a response, which we call feedback. Okay, now looking at my definition, I have underlined some terms: the sender, message, medium, the receiver, and feedback. These are the most important part of our definition. Without these terms, this won't mean anything to anybody. Okay, now these words that I have underlined also form part of the elements of communication process. We shall talk about it later. Okay, before we can even communicate, we need to check the principles of effective communication. Now, what do we mean when we say these are the principles of communication? What is the reason for you to communicate? Who are you communicating with? And what is your expectations in terms of that communication? Right. Now, we have 4 principles of communication. Audience. Who is the intended audience that you want them to receive the message? At this moment, my intended audience is level 2 English First Additional Language at TVET colleges. It is possible for many people to reach this communication, but who is it intended for, basically? The level 2 English First Additional Language, my audience. Okay, who are you talking to? Who is that person? You don't just communicate for the sake of saying something, but who are you talking to? I do believe that you understand the purpose, the reason for communication. You don't just start to talk, and because when you talk by yourself, then we say that person is mad and that person is losing some marbles, and we have name callings, blah 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 blah. When you talk for no reason, there must be a purpose for you to communicate. At the moment, I have a purpose to teach. My purpose is to teach my audience, level 2. That is the purpose. You start communication because you have a purpose. You have a reason why you want to talk. Okay. Clarity. Whatever the message that you are conveying must be clear. It must have clarity. Okay. Let the message be clear, to the point, concise. Concise means it must be to the point, straightforward message. It must be correct. By correct, we mean the language that is used must be written. If it's a written language, it must be written properly. Now lately we have a challenge of students writing short messages, even in formal documents. The moment you write, instead of writing because you write the word course, it changes the whole meaning of the whole sentence, and now the communication will not reach the intended audience because it was not correct as per the rules of communication. It must be correct. Courteous. By courteous, we mean it must be polite. Your message must be to the point, yes. It must be correct, yes. But it must have a little bit of respect attached to it. I believe in respect so much, it is two-way. I respect my students, they give the same kind of respect. If I give them instructions, they are straight to the point with a little bit of respect in them. I don't undermine them because they are just students, but I attach politeness in my messages, in my instructions, and there must be respect. Okay. Coherent. There must be logic in what message that you are saying. Think before you can say anything. There must be logic. Don't just speak for the sake of saying something, and then the students will be like, okay, what is this person saying? What is she supposed to, maybe she was supposed to say this. There must be logic. Okay, so the clarity has 4 C's: concise, correct, courteous, and coherent. Okay, fourth, feedback. Feedback is nothing else but in our normal language, it is response. When you talk to somebody, you expect a response. There's an expectation of a response. You cannot just talk and then it's okay, you have said your part, and then nobody responds, and maybe nobody gives feedback on what you have said. Okay, now I am teaching as we speak. My expectation, my feedback, the response that I want to get from my students is them making it at the end of the year during examinations, and that is feedback. Okay, now let's look into the elements of communication process. I have created, this is not in any of your textbooks, but I have created it in such a way that it becomes easy for you to learn and understand it easy. This is how I understand it easy. Maybe somebody might understand it the same way that I do. And now, when you are asked to give the elements of communication process, please don't think that you have to give them in any sequence. As long as you know them, and as long as you know what they mean, then it becomes easy for you to give them in any format. They are not in any format, but this format that I have used makes it easy for you to remember them. Okay. Now the sender. Element number 1, the sender. It is element number 1, the sender. Who is the sender? The sender is the carrier of the information, the carrier of the message. That person, we also call the sender the transmitter. The transmitter meaning the one that carries the information, the one who has the message. Now in this instance, I am the sender, okay? And I am teaching you. What I'm teaching you is the message. I'm giving you information, which is the sender gives the message. The sender does what? Gives the message to whom? My students, my audience. Remember that we are my audience, and then you are my students, and then that makes you the receivers. You are my receiver. The sender creates the message because I have the message, I have news, I have information. I give it in the form of message. I am teaching you. My message here is teaching. And who am I teaching? The receiver. My students, I'm giving you as the receiver. Now, what do you do with the message that you have got from the sender? Okay, sorry, before we can talk about that. Okay, the sender encodes. In simple English, code is nothing but language. It is what? Language. The code is nothing but language. Now, as the sender, I encode. Okay, I will encode as the sender. Now the receiver gets the message, and what do? They decode. I speak using a code. At this point, my code is English. I am speaking in English. Okay, this is my code. And then you are going to receive the message in English. And then what do you do with the message that you get in that language? You decode, you interpret the message. And after interpretation of the message, what do? You give feedback based on what you have heard and what you think you have understood. Okay, now when coming to the decoding of the message, sometimes we end up getting feedback that is negative or sometimes positive, though the expectation is to get feedback that is positive. Nobody expects any feedback that is negative, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, we end up having either positive feedback or negative feedback. Why? Because the interpretation might differ from one individual to the other. Okay, you are not wrong, you are not stupid or anything, but the way that you interpreted the message, the manner in which was the message clear? Was it correctly conveyed to you? Was it clear? If the message is not clear, then the feedback is going to be negative. Okay. Now, what do we call when we say that when now the feedback is negative? We call it the barrier. Okay, the barrier. What is a barrier in simple English? A disturbance. The interactions, disturbances, things that disturb you from getting the message correctly. Okay, in our next video, I will teach you the different types of barriers. But at the moment, I'm just saying that the message will be disturbed between the sender and the receiver. There might be the barriers, the disturbances of the message. Okay, say for instance, you students, you hear a message from one lecturer, and then you are asked to convey the message to the rest of the class. In most cases, the last person to receive the message will get the wrong one because of the barriers, the noise. Ne? Okay, the barrier we also call the noise, but remember, this noise is not necessarily the noise that we hear from our ears, but it refers to the disturbances. Okay, now this word noise here is not literal, but it is used figuratively. Okay, for interest's sake, I'll just define what figurative and literal meaning of the words are. When we say the word is literal, it means that word means has the original meaning of that word. If we say noise in a literal way, we refer to the sound that we hear from our ears. But now when we're talking about the noise as figuratively used, it means something different, which is the disturbances. It might be something that we see. It might be something that the noise hears. It might be something that obscure our view. Now, if, for instance, you were trying to read here, and I put my arm across, you're not going to be able to see. And then what did I do? There's a noise. There is a disturbance. There is a barrier. Okay, this is a disturbance. You don't hear anything, but your view is being obscured from seeing what you wanted to see. Okay, it is noise. Okay, and now remember that we have what we call jargon. We call what? Jargon. Jargon is nothing but the language that we use among people, and we understand each other based on the subject, based on the content, based on the relationship. Okay, for instance, when we talk in communication terms and we say noise, everybody who has studied communication will understand what noise is. But talking to somebody who studied science and you tell them about noise, they know noise. It's something that you hear from the ears. Okay, so we call that language the jargon, the language that we use and we understand each other as a small group of people. Okay, medium or channel. Number 3, number 4, number 5, medium. Medium is the manner. Medium and channel mean the same thing, okay? You are not forced to say medium stroke channel like I did. I just wanted to indicate to you that they mean the same thing. You can either say medium or you can either say channel. They mean the same thing. The medium or channel means nothing but the manner in how did you receive the message. It might be through internet, it might be through an SMS, it might be through a letter, it might be on WhatsApp page. It's the medium. How did you get the message? You got the message, yes. Where and how? From the newspaper. It's called medium. Okay. Now, what do you as the receiver decode the message to, the feedback to? You decode and then you give feedback. Where do you now send the feedback to? Back to the sender. I expect feedback from you because I am the one who taught you. So I expect results back to me. Okay, I give a message as the sender. The message is decoded by the receiver. The receiver responds in a form of feedback, whether positive or negative. But I expect as the sender, I expect feedback, okay, which is fair. I do believe that this is a bit easier to understand. Under categories of communication, we have number 1, intrapersonal communication. Okay, please, the spelling of intrapersonal communication as compared to, as most of the times is confused with interpersonal. It's intrapersonal. Intrapersonal communication is communication within oneself. When you are thinking, when you are communicating with your own self, communication inside of you is called intrapersonal communication. When you're talking to yourself, when we think. And another example of intrapersonal communication is when we dream. In our dreams, we have people that we might be dreaming about. In a dream, you are with such and such person, but basically you are not literally communicating with those people. So it's within oneself. It is called intrapersonal communication. It's one category of communication. Okay. Interpersonal communication is now when you communicate to somebody. Two people interacting with one another. Remember at the beginning we said communication is a two-way process where there is interaction of information between two or more people. Now, in interpersonal communication, we are referring to from two people to a small number of people. Say a good example is when we are in classrooms. It's interpersonal communication because it's between a lecturer and students, small number. Or when you are with your friends, it is interpersonal communication because you are talking to somebody that responds here and there, and you see, and those people that most of the times we in interpersonal communication, it's when we have close relationships with those people, or maybe when sometimes we don't have that close relationship. You are at the bank and then you want to ask something from somebody, you talk direct to that person. It is interpersonal communication. Somebody, small number, one person to a small number of groups. Okay, it is interpersonal. The third one is mass communication. Mass communication. The word mass means big, many, or large. Now, the mass communication is the kind of communication referring to when a large number of people is addressed in one venue. Examples that are practical to you as students is when the SRC will call a meeting and all students of the college will go gather elsewhere wherever the message will be conveyed, and individuals from the SRC office will be addressing you. It is mass communication because the message is conveyed across the college. Okay. Now we have the thin line. There's a thin line between mass and media communication. Media communication. We cannot really differentiate between the two terms because they work hand in glove. When we're talking of masses, we're now also referring to the media. Okay, but it is not obvious that when we say mass, then it's media. But mass can also be media. We can say mass media. An example of mass media is this video that we are shooting today. Okay, everybody who has access to this, they might be using any form of a gadget. It might be a tablet, it might be a phone, it might be a laptop, it might be a computer. It is in the media, and it is mass because many people are going to access this video, but then it is not physical. When you walk into a venue where a large number of people is going to be addressed, then it's mass communication. But now, if you go into the internet, then it is mass media because the same information that you access from Google, everybody can access all over the world. It is mass media communication. That is why I say we cannot differentiate between the two terms and say there's a difference between mass and media communication. Okay, there is no clear distinction between the two. Okay, so bear in mind that it is intrapersonal, it's within yourself. Interpersonal, a small number of people. Mass, when a large number of people is being addressed. That's the difference between the three categories. Okay, now let's look into the types of communication. We do have two types of communication, which is verbal and non-verbal communication. The verbal communication is the simplest. The one that I'm using right now, I am talking. When we are talking, when we are vocal, it is verbal. Okay. Now, verbal communication also, it's not only about when I'm talking, but even when I'm writing. An example that I believe that all of us can be familiar with. If you know somebody personally and they send you a message, it might be a WhatsApp message, it might be an SMS. When you read the message, you I don't know what else to say, it's psychological or something, but you can hear the voice of that person when you read that particular message. Even on writing letters, if somebody writes you a letter and then you know that person personally, say for instance it's a pen pal, perhaps from outside the country or maybe far from you, and then when they write you a letter, you read that letter and you hear their voice behind what you are reading. It is a verbal communication. Okay. The non-verbal communication is when there is no voice, but there are gestures, there are signs. Okay. We have three examples of non-verbal communication. It is the visual semiology. The visual semiology referring to the sight when we see, the vision when you see the sight. Okay, the ones that we see from our eyes, and then you know that, okay, an example is the traffic lights. They have three colors. It's red, green, and orange. We see with our eyes. It is called visual semiology. They communicate with us. There is no voice. Nobody will say, now you have to stop. But you know, according to this color, that the traffic light is now showing, then it means I must stop. Okay, I believe that it's a good example that we are all familiar with. Okay, another example is hearing, which is called acoustic semiology. It is acoustic semiology because it is from hearing, our ears. We hear sounds. It is called acoustic semiology. And then we hear and we see. When you hear and see, it is another type of non-verbal communication. You have seen, and then you hear what the communication might be. Okay, it's acoustic semiology. The third one is when we touch. Sometimes we remember that we have people who are blind. They communicate in their own way. They know things by touching. They touch a coin and they can tell that this one is 1 rand, and they can tell you that this one is this and that. They touch. They know that they will touch you, and sometimes there are those that are, I think it's wisdom. They are too wise to even tell. When they touch, they can tell you who that person is if they have known that person before they got blind. It is called touching, and it's non-verbal. That person did not tell you that I am so and so, but you know from touching that this person is the one that I believe that I know. Okay. Our lesson ends here today, and I shall see you when you see me. Goodbye.